Most of the time we're praying, God, get me out of this challenge. Get me out of this trouble at work. Get me out of this financial setback. And there's nothing wrong with that. But before you get out, you have to invite God in. Sometimes the miracle is not in getting out. It's in what God is going to do in the situation. And instead of just praying, God, get me out, why don't you start praying, God, come in to this hospital room while I take the treatment. Come into this trouble at work where the people aren't fair. Come into this anxiety that I'm dealing with. What's more powerful than God bringing you out is when God comes in and begins to change things. He comes in and gives you favor despite who's trying to push you down. He comes in and gives you strength that you can't explain. Grace to outlast what should stop you. And if you're only focused on God bringing you out, then you're going to be disappointed, because God doesn't do things on our timetable. Sometimes it's taking longer than we thought. But when you ask God to come in, you can be at rest. God, I know you're right here with me. You are ordering my steps, and at the right time, you'll get me to where I'm supposed to be. You don't have to fight everything, live upset, can't sleep at night. That happens when you're only focused on getting out. God is waiting to come in. When you ask Him in, you're saying, God, don't just change the circumstances, change me. Help me to not just go through this situation, help me to grow through it. Help me to learn, increase my faith, let my character come up higher. If God delivered us out of everything instantly, we would never reach our highest potential. God works in the trouble. He works in the uncomfortable situations. And sometimes God is not bringing you out yet because He wants the odds to be against you in a bigger way. So when He brings you out, it will be a greater miracle. Now, voices will whisper, God doesn't even hear your prayers. That's why nothing's changing. The truth is, God is setting you up to show out in your life. When He brings you out, no one will be able to deny that His favor is on you. God said in Isaiah, when you go through the waters, I will be with you. When you go through the rivers, they will not overwhelm you. When you walk through the fire, you will not be burned. It's interesting that God didn't say, I'll keep you out of every fire. You won't have to face any floods. No, He said the challenges will come. There will be adversities and things we don't understand. But the whole key to this verse is when He said, I will be with you in the fire, in the flood, in the famine. Are you trying to get out of something that God is going to take you through? Are you fighting the process? It's not fair. God, I can't take it anymore. Everything will change if you'll start inviting God into the fire. He's already promised He'll be with you. Maybe He's just waiting for your invitation. The right attitude is, God, I know you're going to bring me out, but in the meantime, I'm asking you to come in to this challenge in my health. Come into this loss I'm going through. Come into this depression that's trying to stop me. When you invite God into your difficulty, you'll feel Him breathing in your direction, empowering you, enabling you, favoring you. Is it a greater testimony that God kept you out of the fire, or that He came with you in the fire and brought you through it? David said, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. Why? Because you are with me. When you know God is with you, when you've invited Him into your situation, you'll have a smile in the middle of the difficulty. You'll have a song of praise in the prison, like Paul and Silas. You won't be complaining about the trouble, worried about when it's going to work out. You'll be at peace in the midst of the storm. And the reason David didn't live afraid, even though he went through valleys and all kinds of adversities, is he understood this principle to invite God into the trouble. He wasn't just waiting to get out. He knew that God was right there with him. If you're only praying, God, get me out, you'll be discouraged until it changes. Joel, I can't enjoy my life. I have this child that's off course. I'm dealing with an illness. My finances are low. When it turns around, they don't have a good attitude. You're waiting for God to bring you out while God is waiting for you to invite Him in. You have to do like David. Father, thank you that you are with me right here in this valley. I'm not going to live afraid and worried. I may not see a way, but I know you have a way. Instead of just trying to get out of the valley, out of the trouble, out of the fire, if you'll start saying, God, come in. Let me feel your presence in the fire. Show me your greatness in this trouble. Then you'll have a peace that passes understanding, a joy when you could be discouraged, a hope when you should be distraught. 3 Hebrew teenagers wouldn't bow down to the king's golden idol. The king was so furious, he threatened to have them thrown into a fiery furnace. The teenager said, King, we're not worried. We know our God will deliver us. This made the king even more angry. He had the guards turn up the furnace 7 times hotter than normal. Why did God have the king make the fire even hotter? He wanted it to be a bigger miracle. He wanted the odds to be more against them. The fact is, God could have kept them out of the fire. He's God. He parted Red Seas. He opened blind eyes. Would have been no problem for God to change the king's mind or to help these teenagers escape. But God doesn't deliver us from every fire. Sometimes He'll take you through the fire. The good news is God knows how to make you fireproof. People don't determine your destiny. Bad breaks cannot stop God's plan for your life. Sickness, addictions, unfair situations don't have the final say. Now don't be discouraged because God didn't keep you out of the fire. God doesn't stop every negative situation. He uses adversities to move us into our purpose. We would never know His power if we were never thrown into a fire, so to speak. You wouldn't know He was a healer if you never had an illness. We wouldn't know He could move mountains if we never faced big obstacles. Now quit complaining about what you're up against. It's not a surprise to God. The enemy may have turned up the fire 7 times hotter than normal. They didn't do that without God's permission. God is in control, not just of your life, He's in control of your enemies. Instead of complaining about the fire, start inviting Him into the fire. When He's with you, you cannot be defeated. You and God are a majority. He is a supernatural God. He's not limited by the fire, by the floods, by the famines. What should take you out cannot stop your destiny. Instead of complaining about everything that you don't like, if you'll recognize that God allowed the difficulty. I'm not saying that He sent it, but He allowed it because He had a purpose. And the purpose is not so you can live miserable, worried, and afraid. His purpose is to show His glory through you. It's so other people can see His power and favor on your life. Without great tests, you won't have a great testimony. Without big battles, we won't see big victories. These teenagers said, we know our God will deliver us. They made this statement of faith. Then they said something even more powerful. But even if He doesn't, we're still not going to bow down. That's the kind of people that give the enemy a nervous breakdown. When you can say, God, this is what I'm believing for. This is what I'm hoping will happen. But God, even if it doesn't work out my way, I'm still going to give you praise. I'm still going to be good to others. I'm still going to show up Sunday and usher. I'm still going to pursue my dreams. That attitude gets God's attention. You're saying, God, not my will, but let your will be done. But too often, we're putting conditions on God and conditions on our prayer. God, I'll be happy if my boss moves to the backside of Mars. When you get him out of my life, then I'll have a good attitude. Have you ever thought God may be using that person to do a work in you, to grow you up, to develop your character, to teach you to love those that are not very lovable? Instead of praying, God, get me out of this situation, I'm asking you to start praying, God, come into this situation. Help me to have a good attitude. Help me to do the right thing when the wrong thing is happening. It's very powerful when you can say, God, if my boss never moves, if he's here until I go to heaven, I know you have given me the strength to overcome, the power to be happy in the middle of this difficulty, and I am not going to let this person, this sickness, this injustice steal my joy. Now you're growing. Now you're coming up higher. Because sometimes God is waiting for us to pass the test before He brings us out. The king had the guards tie up the teenagers' hands and feet with cords. They threw them into the furnace. It was so hot that the guards were instantly killed. It looked like this was the end for the teenagers, but people don't have the final say. If it's not your time to go, you're not going to go. Nothing can snatch you out of God's hands. In a little while, the king came to check on them. He looked through the furnace window and was puzzled. He said, didn't we throw 3 men in bound? I see 4 men loosed, and one looks like the Son of God. God may not keep you out of every fire, but don't worry, He'll come into the fire with you. He'll help you overcome what looks impossible. That illness should be the end. The medical report said you were done, but like with my mother, God came in the fire with you, and here you are still going strong. That loved one you lost, or that person that walked away broke your heart. That should have soured your life. But look at you now, still moving forward, doing great things, fulfilling your purpose. How could that be? God came in the fire with you. The psalmist said, God is a very present help in times of trouble. We know that God is always with us. But when you're in difficulties and you invite Him in, you're going to feel His presence in a greater way. You're going to be more aware that you're not alone. When you get thrown into the fire, so to speak, you won't be bitter. You'll stay in faith, knowing that the 4th man is right there with you. The God who controls the fire, the God who heals, who restores, who pays you back for the injustice is right there watching over you, protecting you, ordering your steps.